Okay, so get this. You have these AI models, right? These super advanced language models that can practically hold a conversation with you.
Yeah.
But even they can be tricked into spilling harmful content.
Really?
It's kind of wild, right? Like, imagine a super secure vault that has this, like, surprisingly obvious way to break in.
That's a good analogy.
If you're as curious as we are about how to really lock down these models, hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us do these deep dives into AI safety.
It's crucial work, absolutely. As these large language models, or LLMs, become increasingly vital in so many fields, like healthcare, finance, even education.
Yeah, high-stakes stuff.
Exactly. Guaranteeing they stick to safety rules, it becomes essential. And thankfully, there's some really exciting research happening on that front. That's what we're digging into today.
We've got this paper, right? Deliberative alignment. Reasoning enables safer language models. Super interesting stuff.
Definitely.
Plus, we've got all our usual notes to keep us on track. So for this deep dive, our aim is to really understand this deliberative alignment concept.
Sounds good.
How it works, what impact it has on making these LLMs safer, and what it all means for the future of, AI in general.
And don't worry, we're not going to get too technical. We'll break it down in a way that makes sense for everyone. Think of it as like a guided tour through this really complex landscape.
So the paper kicks off by pointing out some limitations with how we currently approach LLM safety, like supervised fine-tuning and reinforcement learning from human feedback.
Right.
So what are the big weaknesses with these existing methods?
Okay, so first off, the paper highlights that a lot of these LLMs respond, like, super quickly, almost instantly.
Yeah, like they're always ready with an answer.
Exactly. But there's not a distinct step where they, pause, consider the request, and really think about if their answer could be potentially unsafe.
So they're fast, but maybe not always thinking things through carefully enough.
Right. And the second major limitation they bring up is how these models learn what's safe. It's mostly indirect.
What do you mean?
So they're essentially inferring safety standards from tons of examples that humans have labeled. They're not directly learning the actual safety guidelines or rules themselves.
So it's like learning to drive by just watching a bunch of driving videos but never actually reading the traffic laws.
That's a great analogy. You might kind of get the gist, but you could easily miss crucial details or make mistakes in tricky situations.
And that's where things can go wrong with these LLMs.
Precisely. This indirect learning can lead to some pretty serious vulnerabilities. Like, you've got jailbreaks, where people find clever ways to manipulate the model into bypassing its safety controls.
Oh, like hacking the system.
Kinda. And then there's over-refusals, which is where the model unnecessarily refuses to answer perfectly harmless requests. It's like being so afraid of breaking a rule that you end up not doing anything at all.
So it's too cautious, basically.
Exactly. And another issue is that this indirect approach makes it harder for these models to apply their safety knowledge to new, unexpected situations.
So they lack adaptability.
Exactly. They haven't truly internalized the principles, so they struggle when things deviate from the examples they've seen.
Okay, so it's clear that a different approach is needed. And that brings us to deliberative alignment, right? So what's the core concept there?
The basic idea is to directly teach these LLMs the actual safety guidelines. Like, give them the rule book.
Okay.
And then train them to actively remember and think through those guidelines before they generate a response.
So, like, give them a moment to pause and reflect.
Yeah, instead of just blurting out the first thing that comes to mind. And for that reasoning process, they use something called chain of thought reasoning, or COTI.
COTI. So what does that actually look like?
Imagine, instead of just giving an answer, the AI shows its work. It breaks down its thought process into a series of steps.
Like showing its reasoning.
Yeah. So in deliberative alignment, these steps involve the model looking at what the user is asking, figuring out which safety rules might apply, and then considering how those rules relate to the specific request.
I'm looking at figure 1 in the paper, and it really illustrates this well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's that example with the ROT13 encoded request. It shows how the model first decodes the request, which is highlighted in yellow.
Right.
And then it references the safety policies, which are highlighted in green, before refusing to answer.
It's like you can see the AI thinking out loud. It's like, okay, this request seems a bit fishy. Let me check the rule book. Yep, this violates policy X. Better refuse.
So how do they actually train the model to do this deliberate reasoning? The paper mentions 2 main stages, right?
Yes. The first stage is supervised fine-tuning, or SFT. This involves creating a training data set filled with examples that include, the user's request, the model's chain of thought, and the final output.
Right.
And the crucial thing here is that those chains of thought, the reasoning steps, explicitly mention the relevant safety specifications. So basically, they're showing the AI how to think through the policies step by step.
So they're not just telling it what's wrong, they're showing it why it's wrong.
Exactly. But you might be wondering, where do these training examples come from in the first place? Do humans have to write out all those detailed reasoning processes?
That's what I was thinking. Seems like a ton of work.
Right. But this is where it gets really clever. They use a method called context distillation with a helpfulness-trained model, which they call an O-type model.
Okay.
So initially, they give this O-type model the safety specifications in the system prompt, along with the user's request, and tell it to explain its reasoning while citing relevant policies. Then, once the model produces a response with its chain of thought, they remove those initial instructions that contain the safety rules to create the actual training example.
Yeah.
It's like teaching the model to internalize those safety rules.
So the model kind of learns to teach itself how to reason about safety based on those initial instructions.
Well, not entirely on its own. They also use another model, a judge reasoning model, or GRM, to filter these generated completions. Yeah. This GRM also gets the safety specifications, and its job is to evaluate the prompt chain of thought answer to make sure the reasoning is good quality and the final answer follows the rules. You can see an example of how the GRM is prompted in Figure 6 of the paper.
So like having a safety expert double-checking the AI's work.
Exactly, ensuring consistency and that it's not just making things up.
Got it. So that first stage, SFT, focuses on teaching the model how to reason about safety policies. What about the second stage, reinforcement learning?
Right. So in stage 2, they use reinforcement learning, or RL, to refine the model's reasoning even further.
Okay.
And again, they use that judge LLM, the GRM, to provide reward signals. But here's the interesting part. During this RL stage, the chain of thought is hidden from the GRM.
Why hide the reasoning during RL? It seems counterintuitive.
The idea is to avoid explicitly rewarding specific reasoning steps during this stage. This helps prevent the model from learning to produce reasoning that looks good superficially, but doesn't lead to safer outcomes in practice.
Like, it's not just about saying the right things. It's about actually understanding the reasoning.
Precisely. They want the model to be safe for the right reasons, not just because it knows what the judge model likes to hear.
That's a subtle but really important point. So after these two training stages, what are the main results they're seeing with these O1 models trained with deliberative alignment?
Well, one of the most impressive findings is that they achieve really precise adherence to their safety specifications without needing humans to write all those chain of thought examples or the final answers.
So it's more efficient.
Much more. This addresses a major bottleneck in traditional safety training, which often requires huge amounts of human-labeled data. The fact that they can generate this training data synthetically makes the whole process significantly more scalable.
So it's more practical for real-world applications.
Exactly. Now, when they tested these O1 models, O1 Preview, O1, and O3 Mini against other state-of-the-art LLMs like GPT-4o on various safety benchmarks, the results were really promising.
Yeah, I'm looking at Table 1 and Figure 2, and there's a lot of data there. What are the key takeaways?
They saw a clear Pareto improvement with the O1 models, meaning they're not only safer, but also more nuanced in their responses.
Okay.
They're better at refusing when they should, but also less likely to over-refuse harmless requests. They do especially well on resisting those jailbreak attempts, measured by a benchmark called strong reject. They also handle disallowed content better, as seen in the challenging refusal evaluation and wild chat benchmarks. And importantly, they show lower over-refusal rates on datasets like excess test, transformation exception, and policy over-refusals.
The paper provides some great examples in Figure 7, 8, and 11 to illustrate this.
Oh, yeah.
Figure 7 shows how O1 refuses to assist with creating a fake disabled parking placard. Figure 8 shows it providing helpful resources for someone expressing self-harm while clearly referencing the relevant safety policy.
Yeah.
And Figure 11 shows how it correctly handles a translation request for disallowed content, understanding the transformation exception in their policy.
Those are great examples. And it's worth noting that the O1 model showed improvement in how well it followed the desired response style compared to O1 Preview. They attribute this to refinements in their guidelines and the RL stage in O1.
Okay. How did the O1 models compare to other leading models like Gemini and Claude, as shown in Figure 12?
The O1 model showed very competitive performance on both safety and robustness in those comparisons, particularly on strong reject. They also consistently maintained those low over-refusal rates, often outperforming the others in those areas.
It also seems like providing the model with more compute resources during inference, giving it more thinking time, had a positive impact, right?
You're absolutely right. Figure 13 suggests that when the model have more compute resources available, allowing it to engage in that chain of thought reasoning more thoroughly, it performs even better on tough safety challenges.
Interesting. So it's not just about the training, but also about giving the model enough resources to apply that training effectively.
Right. Now, those ablation studies in Figure 14 really delve into the science behind deliberative alignment. What do they reveal about the different training stages?
Yeah. What did they find?
Those studies clearly show that both the supervised fine-tuning and the reinforcement learning stages are crucial. When they removed safety-related data from either stage during training, the model's safety performance significantly dropped.
So both are essential.
Exactly. SFT provides that initial understanding of the policies and reasoning, while RL refines that reasoning and improves the model's ability to apply its chain of thought. Another key finding was that directly teaching those policies during training, as in deliberative alignment, is more effective than simply giving the whole policy document to the model at deployment.
So it really needs that structured learning process to truly grasp the concepts.
Right. You can't just cram the rulebook at the last minute.
And to see if the model was actually referencing the right rules, they analyzed policy retrieval accuracy, as shown in Table 2.
Right. That's an important check. And they found that models trained with deliberative alignment were much more likely to reference the correct policy category in their chain of thought when refusing harmful requests or giving safe completions compared to a model without this specific training.
Okay. It's encouraging that the training seems to be translating into the model's reasoning process.
Definitely. And it looks like this approach also helps the models generalize better to unseen scenarios, those out-of-distribution cases, as Table 3 highlights.
Yeah, the non-English and encoded jailbreak attempts.
Right. The models trained with deliberative alignment showed good ability to apply their safety knowledge to prompts in different languages and even to those encoded jailbreak attempts, even though they weren't specifically trained on that kind of data. That robustness is really key.
Absolutely. Now, the paper briefly compares deliberative alignment to other alignment approaches like constitutional AI and self-refine, as shown in Figure 15. What's the main distinction they emphasize?
The key difference is that deliberative alignment directly teaches and optimizes for reasoning over safety specifications within that chain of thought itself. Other methods might use those specifications to guide the creation of training data or to refine outputs after generation.
Okay.
But deliberative alignment makes the reasoning process over those policies a central part of the training and inference process.
So it's baked into the model's thinking from the ground up.
Exactly. It's not an afterthought.
So, taking a step back, what are the real-world implications of deliberative alignment? How can it be used to build safer AI systems?
It has huge potential, particularly in areas where safety is paramount. It could lead to much more reliable safety controls, allowing for more nuanced control over how models behave. Imagine AI assistants in healthcare or finance that can not only provide helpful information, but also reliably adhere to strict safety and ethical guidelines by actually reasoning through them.
That sounds incredibly valuable.
It is. But the researchers do acknowledge that this is still an ongoing area of research. They point out the challenges of ensuring alignment with safety guidelines that are constantly evolving.
That makes sense. It's a moving target.
Right. And looking ahead, there are still bigger questions about ensuring that highly advanced AI with capabilities far exceeding what we have today remain aligned with human values, regardless of how well we train them on current policies.
There's still a lot to figure out.
Absolutely. But it's fascinating and crucial work.
So to sum it all up, what are the key takeaways about deliberative alignment?
Here are the main points. First, it directly teaches LLMs the actual text of safety specifications. Second, it trains them to reason through those specifications using chain of thought before responding. Third, this leads to better resistance against jailbreaks and fewer unnecessary over-refusals. Fourth, it demonstrates strong generalization to new and unexpected situations. And finally, because it uses synthetic data generation, it offers a more scalable approach compared to methods that rely solely on human-labeled data.
That's a great summary. So we've really explored deliberative alignment in depth today. It seems like a significant step toward building safer and more trustworthy AI.
It is, and it raises an important question for everyone listening. Given the progress with approaches like this, what are the next crucial steps to ensure AI remains aligned with human values as it becomes even more capable? What role will this explicit reasoning play in that ongoing challenge?
That's something we should all be thinking about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the science of AI safety. If you found it as interesting as we did, make sure to subscribe for more insightful discussions on the cutting edge of AI research.
It was a pleasure being here.
We'll see you next time.